Hello there, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be looking at, well, not a Mac, but we'll get to a Mac. First we're going to be looking at the Sega Dreamcast. And the Sega Dreamcast, for those of you who don't know, was a video game console made by Sega and was released on September 9th, 1999, if I recall correctly, at least here in the United States. And what was really cool about the Sega Dreamcast was it was really the first system to include internet connectivity built into the product. It had a modem built right in. This has a 56K dial-up modem. Now, of course, what you could do with that modem is dial up to the internet, download, your email, look at websites, download game saves, all sorts of cool stuff that wasn't really done before. So it was really a pioneer. And I remember using it and dialing up back in the day, and it was really cool. I mean, I had experience with some video game systems dialing up. I think the first one was the Sega Saturn, which had that Netlink adapter that you put in the cartridge slot. But this had everything right inside of it. It had the modem built in, so it made connecting to the internet very, very simple. So why are we looking at the Sega Dreamcast today? Well, some of you may have known that there's this little thing that's been going around called DreamPi. And what DreamPi allows you to do is use a Raspberry Pi and a USB modem and sort of interrupt where the Dreamcast thinks it's dialing into the internet and actually share the Raspberry Pi's internet connection, whether it be from Wi-Fi or Ethernet, to get your Sega Dreamcast back online. So I heard about this, I thought it was really cool, and I thought I got to do this right away. and then life happened and I didn't get to it. So recently I've been tinkering around with this and I got it to work. It does go online. But I thought, okay, since the Sega Dreamcast can go online through this method, can other things go online, like a computer? Yeah, now I think you know where I'm going. So what I'm going to do first is show you how this works and how the Sega Dreamcast gets online. Then we'll see if this could work with, let's say, an iBook clamshell computer. So I guess that's about all introduction we need, and we can start looking at this. I'm not going to do like a step-by-step how you do it. There's a lot of instructions of how to set up your Raspberry Pi for DreamPi and all that stuff. It's pretty simple, but I'm just going to show you how I got this working and note some details that I think are important to keep in mind. But all right, enough of that. Let's dive right in. First, I'm going to introduce you to the Sega Dreamcast. Now, some of you have not had the privilege of owning a Sega Dreamcast. So, for those of you who have not, well, let's take a quick look at it. So, the Sega Dreamcast is a video game console released by Sega in 1999 here in the US, and it's pretty neat. I like this system a lot. But what we're going to be focusing on today is the modem on the back. So this is a 56K dial-up modem, and it's modular, so I could remove it from the system. So it comes off of that little slot there. Now, what's cool about this is there was a broadband adapter that was sold for this system. Of course, those were very expensive, at least they were when I was trying to get a hold of them back in the early 2000s or so. What most people ended up doing was importing those adapters from Japan, which would work on an American console, but the problem was that not a lot of games even supported the broadband adapter. So even if you had that fancy broadband adapter, not every game supported it, and, well, you could just use the web and your email, I guess, but what was the fun in that? So, of course, today, a lot of people don't have dial-up anymore, for obvious reasons. It's slow, you need a standard telephone line to use it, and, well, Wi-Fi and high-speed internet is just awesome. So, how do we get one of these online? Well, in the past, there were a few clever techniques using a Windows server and things like that. And yeah, this is nothing new getting the Dreamcast online in a modern day and age. However, last year, or somewhere around that, something came out that was much easier to grasp. And of course, I'm talking about DreamPi. DreamPi is a Raspberry Pi installation that you can put on your Raspberry Pi computer and allows your little Raspberry Pi to act as a bridge of sorts for your network. So it takes your dial-up modem here and, well, it bridges it to an Ethernet or Wi-Fi connection. This is pretty plug and play, you just have to be careful of a few things. So the first thing you need besides the Raspberry Pi and your Dreamcast is a dial-up modem. Now I thought, okay, I could get any dial-up modem off the shelf. In fact, I had two dial-up modems just sitting around. This is some CompUSA branded or rebranded modem, and it seems to be pretty generic, just a USB data fax modem. And then here is another modem. This is a serial modem, so it actually does not have a USB port. It has a serial port on the back. So I tried both of these, this with its standard USB plug, and this with the several, actually, USB to serial adapters. And although I could see the Raspberry Pi trying to make sense of these devices, or at least one of them, I had no luck when I was trying to dial in from my connection. So unfortunately, I was not able to use these, although I quite wanted a big bulky modem on my desk to play around with. But what I ended up with was something much smaller. So what I ended up with was this, a Roswell RNX-56 USB modem. As the label says here, it's a 56K V.92 hardware-based data fax modem. It's interesting to note that these little things actually have a few different chipsets, but apparently not all of them work, but this one seemed to. So that's just something I read. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but I was lucky that this one actually ended up working for me. As far as finding a modem that works well for you, well, you have a few options. According to DreamcastLive.net, two popular choices are the Dell NW147 and the Lenovo RD02 D400. Alternatively, you can buy a ready-to-go USB modem with a built-in telephone line voltage inducer for only $29 from the DreamcastLive.net website. So if you're not technically inclined or you don't want to spend hours fussing around with a bunch of modems like I did, that might be your best bet. Just keep in mind, if anything is labeled as a soft modem, let's say it's built into your laptop or something like that, it likely won't work, as I've heard that the hardware modems are required. Now onto the cable. So this is a bit of a weird thing, and you're probably asking, what is with this whole cable here? Unfortunately, the modem by itself does not have enough power to make the Dreamcast think that the phone line is, well, a phone line. Even if you have the modem ignore a dial tone, there's just not enough voltage to make that connection. So essentially what you have to do is supply your own voltage, and that's what we're doing with this little 9-volt battery here. This little diagram I adapted from one that I found online. Basically, you take a capacitor, a resistor, and a 9-volt battery, and splice that to the red phone line inside of your phone cable. Some phone lines have an extra 2 wires, but you could ignore those and just focus on the main 2. This diagram is for NTSC systems like the one I have here, but for PAL systems you'll need 2 9-volt batteries. So with a few snips of wire and some quick soldering, we have our fancy do-it-yourself line voltage inducer. Alright, so now that we understand the basics of how this works, let's set it up and show you how to use it. So first things first is we need our Dreamcast. You don't need a keyboard, that's optional. I picked this up when I was in Japan and I just like showing it off because it's cool. It is dirty, but it works. You do need a controller. I think you need the VMU, which is the memory card unit. You may not, but I have one plugged in here just in case. So we have the Dreamcast, this is powered of course, and then we have a video cable that goes out to this monitor here. Then we have the Raspberry Pi, so this is a Raspberry Pi Model 2. I just have a basic 16 gigabyte SD card in there. We have our Roswell USB modem. This is our Ethernet cord that goes to my switch right there. I'm not going to deal with Wi-Fi, although I could if I wanted to. We have an HDMI cable to the DVI connection on this monitor here. And then the white cable is the power cable for the Raspberry Pi. And of course, between the modem and between where we're going to plug this in the Dreamcast is our line inducer cable that has that battery attached. So first thing first is I'm going to plug this into the Dreamcast. Now, the Raspberry Pi will run a few checks when it starts up, so you want to make sure it completes this process before you do anything with the Dreamcast. Once the screen says DreamPi login, the modem lights will start flashing. So now that the Raspberry Pi is set up and the modem is ready to accept a connection, we're going to turn on our Sega Dreamcast. Boop, 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 boop. We don't have sound here on this monitor, so I'm just improvising. Now you will need a special disc for the Dreamcast. You could just burn one if you really have to, which is what I did, and that's the Planet web browser. I think my disc is a little screwed up because it does yell at me whenever it tries to load something here, and I just skip past it and it seems to be okay. But just for our testing purposes, this will do. Alright, so we're ready to connect to the internet. I'm going to press start on the controller, and we're going to have a few options here. So I'm going to use this since I don't have a mouse, and I'm just going to hit the connect button here. I already configured my dial-up settings, essentially just use the defaults, at least in my case, but follow the DreamPi instructions. I'll put a link in the description if you're going to do this, but you just want to make sure that you're using default stuff, simple phone number, simple password. So it's going to start to initialize, and then it's going to dial up. Now this takes about 30 to 60 seconds or so for it to dial up and make a connection. If you experience any issues, the screen will tell you, and you can always just select retry. Okay, so now it's going to load up this dreampipe.net website, which I believe is like the default website that this connects to at the first setup. The Raspberry Pi, I think, is the one that's managing that connection. Because I think what it's doing is it's actually taking that Planet website, and this is doing like a redirect on it to bring it to a modern website. You can see the little indicators in the top right there. That's like downloading data and such. It's going pretty quick for a dial-up modem. Okay, so we're just about loaded up there, so let's test something out. Let's go to another website. So I'm just going to go up here. Thankfully I have my keyboard. And we'll go to Mac84.net. There we go, not bad at all. Now, the Dreamcast web browser isn't the fastest, but I think it's rendering pages at a respectable speed. I never really remembered this thing being all that fast, and I'm sure the limited memory and stuff in the Dreamcast probably is not helping. But of course, it's dial-up, so what do you expect? But we can navigate to web pages and all this fun stuff, so we do know that it works to a degree. Let's try that again. JavaScript. Yeah, I have some like Google Analytics thing on there that doesn't like. But there you go, the website loads up, so we know that that works. Now, of course, just like navigating the web on older computers, you're going to get a lot of weird things that just aren't going to happen, and some strange messages and stuff. And that's due to the SSL security and things like that that modern websites are looking for, and these older web browsers just can't accommodate. So now that we have the Dreamcast set up and online, now comes the real point in me playing around with this. Can a computer connect through the DreamPi and get online? That's a question that started this whole mess, and we're going to find out. Okay, so my computer of choice today is this lovely Blueberry iBook. This is a Clamshell G3 iBook. I believe this is the first revision. Let's check the specs here. Yep, this is a 300 megahertz PowerPC G3 with, let's see, we have 160 megabytes of memory, so not too shabby. So, of course, what we want to do is not use Ethernet or Airport, but we want to connect using this dial-up modem. So let's see if we could try and do that. First, I'm going to plug this in to the iBook. And that is on the left side here. Okay, now the next thing you have to do is set this up to dial up a connection. So I've already done that. I went to the control panel here. First, I went to the modem control panel, made sure it was selected for my internal modem. I select ignore dial tone just because sometimes you get a little wonky with some of the results here. And then I scroll down to remote access. And here is where you just type in any username, any password, any phone number, similar to how you would have done it with the Dreamcast. So let's see if this works. I'm going to go ahead and click connect. There we go, connected at a blazing 33,600 BPS, about 33K or so, I believe. Alright, so now that we're connected, let's try and use the internet. I'm going to close this panel here and open up our web browser. Yeah, you're not going to be able to load that start page. Let's try something that should work fine. Let's go to Google. That usually loads up a... Yeah, alright, well, it loaded. Let's see if we could find Mac84.net. Alright, so the search results work fine. So I'm going to click on the website here. Wow, that loaded up pretty quick. Cool. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, a lot of the things I'm going to click on are probably not going to work. Ah, there we go. A nice, appropriate website. Let's try and download something here and see what happens. Okay, it's 11 megabytes, and 1 hour and 31 minutes. Yeah, that's going even higher. Yeah, that kind of brings me back. Yeah, that's gonna take a while. As you can see, we're downloading at about 3,000 bytes per second. That's not kilobytes, that's just bytes. So, yeah, I'm gonna cancel this. This is not something I want to do. So, it seems to be your typical dial-up experience. So, you may be thinking, what's so special about this? Yes, this is why I wanted to play around with dial-up. You see, a lot of old devices like this Newton message pad were designed for communicating over a dial-up internet connection. Sure, some of these devices can use newer networking cards and even Wi-Fi adapters, but there's just something cool about using these devices and trying to get online the old-fashioned way. Alright, even I've had my fill of dial-up noises for today. I do have to get some proper internet software installed on this Newton, but it does dial up, even if it doesn't get the response it was looking for. I do have some other things I want to try out too, this other Newton message pad, this Newton fax modem, this Apple personal modem, this original Macintosh modem. I just have all these modems I've collected over the years, and well, now I actually have a way to test them and a way to actually use them, even if their usefulness is, well, limited. But before we go, there's still one last thing I want to try out. This beautiful single-purpose machine from 1999. This is a mail station. It was designed for one thing and one thing only, email. So let's see if this thing has any life left in it. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to connect to the email servers, but let's go ahead and press that lovely dedicated Get Email button and see what happens. Well, the good news is that the modem works and it's able to dial up. The bad news is that since the mail servers it's looking for are no longer active, it can't really do anything. And of course that sounds like a lovely challenge for me, but that'll have to wait for another day. So I'm happy to report that yes, the DreamPi will allow you to dial up from a computer and access the internet. Of course it's going to be at dial-up speeds, but what do you expect? It is useful, however, as we saw, for connecting some dial-up only or dial-up preferred devices online, so you can get a connection even if it's slow, but hey, I guess it's better than nothing. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention here is some people said you could use one of these Magic Jack adapters instead of this voltage line inducer gizmo that we wired up here. Unfortunately, I couldn't get one of these to work. The idea behind it was you get a phone splitter and you plug that in, and then one line goes to the modem, one line goes to the computer or the Dreamcast. I didn't get that to work, so just a heads up there. Maybe this thing is busted. It could be. But building this adapter here was not tricky, and it worked fine, so I never have had a problem with it. The only thing I want to mention is that sometimes you just have to reboot the Raspberry Pi, especially after you've been connected for a while, or you've been connecting and disconnecting, as I've been doing in this video off camera. So if something doesn't work or those lights are not lighting up on that modem, just restart the Raspberry Pi and you should be okay. So I'm really glad that the DreamPi actually worked for the purpose it was not intended for, connecting old computers to the internet. I certainly want to play around with some more of these old modems and see what I can actually do and what will actually work. Of course, it's not the best way to connect some of these older devices to the internet. Of course, if you have a broadband capable switch or something like that, or a PC card or an adapter, of course that'll work much better. And some of these older things like these adapters you can plug into your Commodore 64 or your Apple II to connect directly to Wi-Fi is probably going to be much easier or much faster than a cockamamie setup like this. However, it works, even though it's slow. So I guess that's about it for this video, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go play some Unreal Tournament.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this dial-up filled video. Do you remember using dial-up? I certainly do. If you do as well, sound off in the comments and share some of your vintage internet stories. If you like these sort of videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and be sure to hit that little bell icon as well. If you like social media things, well, you could follow me on Instagram and Twitter via the handle Mac84TV. A big thank you as always to my Patreon supporters. If you want early access to videos and cool behind the scenes stuff like they have, consider becoming a patron of mine at patreon.com/Mac84. Thanks for tuning in for this video, and I'll see you next time right here on Mac84.